My husband had a serious injury weeks ago. He's bedridden and his family come to see him every day. Mother-in-law keeps drilling what I need to do to make my husband comfortable but does nothing to help. Just visits every day and sits around expecting to be fed and entertained. Sometimes Bill, his wife and kids join them and turn the house into a mess. Yesterday Mil, her husband and son came again. They checked on my husband then went to sit in the living room for hours. I served them coffee and croissant. Hours later my husband threw up again, second time. I had to take care of changing his clothes and cleaning the sheets to avoid infections. I was exhausted. I came downstairs and mother-in-law looked at me and asked, "Hey, where's our dinner?" I was shocked that after seeing me go up and downstairs many times and cleaning and bringing new sheets and running the washing machine that she'd expect me to prepare dinner. I'd already eaten a sandwich at 6 and yogurt. I have problems with my stomach and stress and pregnancy made it worse. I'm 4 months in. I pointed at the kitchen and told her to help herself out. She gave me a look then said she didn't expect me to ask her to cook dinner at my house. I said I didn't expect her to ask me to cook dinner while I'm taking care of her son. She started arguing about the way I spoke about my husband saying as his partner. This is the least I could do and called me unhinged for throwing in her face that I'm helping my husband. She got her husband involved asking what his thoughts were on me making guests go hungry and forcing them to cook themselves, when this supposed to be my duty as a host homeowner. Father-in-law said they could order food and call it a day and yelled at my younger brother-in-law to stop playing on his phone and order food, but mother-in-law got mad and lashed out criticizing me saying I wasn't up to the challenge of taking care of my home and my guests like an adult. I lost it on her and told them to leave since she kept yelling disrupting my husband's sleep. She left after saying she felt sorry for her son and grandbaby with an aggressive wife and a mother like me. She told everyone and my older brother-in-law said he understood I'd a lot on my plate, but lectured me about how I should have respect for his mom who was a guest. Repeatedly saying if that was his wife she wouldn't have acted this way. And that I shouldn't use taking care of my husband against them. He asked me to apologize but I didn't. I am a 41 years old male, single dad with a 13-year-old daughter Lacey. My wife died in childbirth and it's just been me and Lacey all her life. My sister has been a big help in raising Lacey, and we do keep in contact with her maternal grandparents. The issue started a couple of months ago when Lacey started her period. I knew this day would come so I spoke to my sister, my female best friend and my mother-in-law to be well prepared. I gave her the talk with her grandmother and aunt there. I buy her pads and tampons. I even have Midol and heating pads ready for Lacey when she needs them. The problem began when I began to notice a smell coming from Lacey's room. I went in to investigate and found pads and tampons openly disposed of in her wastebasket. I checked her bathroom and it was worse. She had her blood-stained undergarments in the tub. I took out her trash and did my best to get rid of the smell, but I didn't know what to do with the underwear in the tub. Later, I noticed bloodstains on the couch. It took a while of cleaning but I got them out. I figured that was the end of that. It happened again last month, when I noticed Lacey's room was stinking again. And I saw she didn't even wash the underwear from before. The bathroom was unbearable at this point. Then earlier this week, I saw bloodstains on the couch again. I sat Lacey down and told her that she had to learn to properly dispose of her feminine hygiene products and wash her underwear, as the smell was becoming too much. And to be careful of getting bloodstains on the couch or anywhere she sits. I also noticed her sheets had a lot of bloodstains and brought this up too. I also let her know that it was okay to get blood on things as long as she washed them. And I wouldn't be upset if I saw her bloodstained items being washed. Lacey immediately blew up at me saying that periods aren't gross and that I was period shaming, and that I needed to educate myself on menstruation. I then got texts from my sister and mother-in-law scolding me for making Lacey feel ashamed of her bodily functions. But I honestly wasn't trying to convey that periods are gross. I was trying to convey that her hygiene needed to be addressed and that the smell was becoming unbearable. I just wanted to make sure that Lacey knew how to properly dispose of pads and tampons without it smelling. And that I wouldn't be annoyed if she washed her blood-stained items. We have washed the sheets with hydrogen peroxide and purchased some OxyClean for future instances should we need it. I have asked her aunt and grandmother about and they'll be able to give her more info as different hygiene products she can use. My daughter received a bike from her uncle, my brother, on her 11th birthday. She was over the moon and excited to use it because it was on her wish list for so long. Days ago, I discovered that my husband reached out to my brother to ask for the recipient for the bike and returned it to the store, and kept the money for himself while my daughter was at school. The bike was at home. My daughter and I got home and she started crying after noticing the bike was gone. My husband was home at the time. He told me he returned the bike and got money in return to spend on something useful for us since the bike was just there as a distraction and there was no need for it now since we're the dead of winter. I was aggravated and lost it on him saying it wasn't his, didn't come from him. And he didn't pay for it so he had no right to touch it knowing our daughter's been wanting it for a long time, and my brother was decent enough to buy it for her despite barely having money to get him by. I told him what he did was theft and insisted he hand over the money to me so I could repurchase it, but he said he spent it on stuff for the house and doesn't have any money left now. But I knew about the money he was stashing away in the bedroom that he forbade me from tossing, and I took some of it and went out to repurchase the bike while he was out the next day. He found out and verbally lashed out at me saying I should have never touched the money he was saving for himself, which isn't much, but I lashed right back that I had to so I could repurchase the bike he took from under our daughter. He explained that he didn't keep the money for himself and instead spent it for necessities for our home, but he was at fault for taking the bike in the first place and he was responsible for getting it back. He yelled at me for almost 10 minutes then stormed outside and started smoking. My daughter asked why her dad was upset and that she no longer wants the bike if dad doesn't want her to have it. But I assured her that's not the case and told her she shouldn't feel guilty and to just focus on enjoying her bike. My husband hasn't stopped grilling me about how I disrespected and undermined him, and managed to make our daughter hate him after making him look like the bad guy. I again said he shouldn't have touched the bike. End of the story. He's called me thief and juvenile for taking money from his savings and being sneaky about it. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here.